Yeah, we'll Hare Krishna. We'll get started with some kirtan. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Mallabha Girivara Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Guru Deva 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Let's recite the Mangala Charana prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaidam Savadutam Parijana Sagitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our weekly study of Bhagavad-gita. So we are continuing to read from 7th chapter entitled as Knowledge of the Absolute, or in Sanskrit it is entitled as Jnana Vijnana Yoga. So Jnana Vijnana Yoga, here Krishna gives knowledge about himself. When we get knowledge about Krishna, right, it includes everything. By knowing Krishna, everything can be known. Because when we say Krishna, Krishna includes the personality of Krishna and Krishna's energies. There is Shaktiman and Shakti. Behind all the energy, right, there is a Shaktiman. By knowing Shaktiman, we can come to know about, if I say that I know that person fully, that means I know the personality as well as the powers he possesses, right? So when we say complete knowledge of Krishna, right, when we know Krishna, that means in the personality of Krishna as well as all his energies. By knowing his energies, everything can be known. So there is nothing else to be known beyond that. So now this 7th chapter gives in a very briefly, Krishna reveals about himself, who he is and what are his different types of energies are, and how the entire creation is sustained by him. And there is nothing superior to him beyond Krishna, the personality of Krishna. Natta Parataram, right? Krishna says in the 7th chapter, the 7th verse, right? Nata Parataram Nane Kinchidasti Dhananjaya. Mai Sarvam Vidam Protam Sutre Manigana Eva. There is nothing beyond me. Like how a pearl necklace is sustained by the thread, even though the thread is not visible, the pearl necklace is sustained by the thread. Similarly, the entire creation, even though Krishna is directly not visible to us, everything is sustained by him. And there is no truth superior to him. Hmm? So by knowing Krishna, the 7th chapter, that's why I said, like, by knowing this chapter nicely, we can actually understand the principles behind Bhagavad-gita completely. Because all the other things elaborated everywhere are details of what Krishna is giving. By knowing knowledge about Krishna, we automatically will come to surrender to him and start, rendering devotional service unto him out of love. Out of love means not out of compulsion, voluntarily, out of free will. So that's why this chapter, when we study, right, automatically by understanding who the personality is, we will start developing devotion unto him and start developing love for him. So we covered up to verse. This chapter contains, as I said, like 5 sections. So we are in the last section, from, right, delusion by Maya to devotion to Krishna. The things in this world, right, are bewildering, right? Delusion by Maya. Because of Maya's delusion, Maya means that which is not. When we mistake things, right, for what they are not, right, we come under the influence of Maya. So by Maya, we are bewildered in this world. So by just focusing on material things, we will get only bewildered, because that is the nature of this material energy, Maya Shakti. It bewilders us. But by developing devotion to Krishna, right, we can become sober and we can realize who we are, right? So that's what this section, verse 26, Krishna talks about how, right, Krishna knows the past, present, and future. Vedagam samatitani vartamanani charjana bhavishani cha bhutani mamchivedana kashtana. Right? Krishna is telling, I am the knower of the past, present, and the future. And then verses 27 to 28 talked about how all jivas are born into delusion, and one who is sinless can do bhakti with determination. Right? 27th verse. Right? That's up to 27 we saw. 27th verse is, Krishna says, right? What is that verse? Ichchadveshi samutvena dvanta mohena bharata. Right? So because of our duality, our desire and hate, right, towards Krishna, right, desire for enjoying in the material energy and then hate towards Krishna brought us to this material world. So that is the reason why we are in this material world, because we wanted to enjoy independent of Krishna, because we didn't want to render devotional service to him out of love. So that's the verse. Ichchadveshi samutvena dvanta mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammogam sarge yanti parantapa. O son of Bharata, O conqueror of the four, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arising from desire and hate. So this is what we covered last week. Now we will cover verse 28. Esham dvanta kadam papam jananam punya karmana te dvanta moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrataha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Esham, those, whose, to, but, antagatam, completely eradicated, papam, sin, jananam, of the persons, punya, pious, karmanam, whose previous activities, they, dvantva, of duality, moha, delusion, nirmuktaha, free from, bhajante, engage in devotional service, mam, to me, dhrida vrataha, with determination. Translation: persons who have acted piously in the previous life and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the dualities of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated in the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render devotional service to the devotees. Magat Seva Dwaram Ahur Vimuktehe. But one who associates with the materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So here, Krishna says, until, one is sufficiently purified. That means his past sinful reactions are cleansed, are eradicated, by performance of pious activities. He cannot be freed from the dualities of delusion. If they are freed, if they have performed pious activities, if they are sufficiently purified, then they will engage in service to Krishna with determination. Bhajante ma dradavrataha. So Krishna is, Prabhupada is in the purport elaborating that, people cannot overcome the delusional energy. The material energy is very difficult to overcome. In the 7th chapter, 14th verse itself, we saw, Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam yeveye prapatyante maya metam tarantite. This divine energy of mind, Krishna is talking about this material energy, is very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it. So until one surrenders to Krishna and renders devotional service unto him, until one is sufficiently purified, he cannot be, relieved from these clutches of the material energy. Now, rendering devotional service unto Krishna is not possible until we have enough knowledge. So how is that possible, How is it possible to render devotional service? Only by getting knowledge of Krishna. How do we get knowledge of Krishna? By association of devotees. by rendering service unto the great devotees. Magat Sevam. When we serve the great devotees, what happens? The door, Dwaram Agur Vimuktake, the door of liberation opens up. But one who associates with the karmis or materialistic people, they just simply continue to, exist in this material world only, which is covered by Tamoguna. Tamodvaram Yoshitam Changi Sangam. So, by rendering service to the devotees or by associating with the devotees, one gets knowledge of Krishna. By getting knowledge of Krishna, one starts rendering devotional service. By that devotional service, one can be liberated from this material energy. So that is what Krishna said. But by developing, right, knowledge of Krishna, slowly, right, the sinful propensities will go away. And then one will be fixed in service to Krishna. Next verse, 29. Would anybody like to recite?
Swamiji, I can try.
Yes, please.
Jara marana mokshaya mamasritya yatanti ye te brahma tadvidutu krutsvam adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Jara, from old age, marana and death, mokshaya, for the purpose of liberation, mam, me, astritya, taking shelter of yatanti, endeavor, all those who, they, such persons, Brahman, tat, actually that, viduhu, they know, Krishnam, everything.
Krishnam, yeah.
Krishnam, everything. Adhyatmam, transcendental. Karma, activities. Cha, also. Akhilam, entirely. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They're actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. Purport. Birth, death, old age, and disease affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, and old age and disease for the spiritual body. So one who attains a spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service, is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in devotional service as described in this verse. The pure devotees are transcendentally situated on the Brahman platform and they know everything about transcendental activities. 4 kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in the transcendental service of the Lord achieve their respective goals. And by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Astriya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman, because they're actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshipping the form of Archa of the Lord, or who are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know by the grace of the Lord the purports of Brahman, Adibhuta,
Adibhuta.
etc., as explained by the Lord in the next chapter.
Thank you.
Dhanyavada.
Thank you. So here Krishna is telling the person who had eradicated in the past life the sinful activities, because we had accumulated, we have been living in this material world millions and millions of life. Over this period of time, we had accumulated both, papa and punya. But all this papa and punya is binding, which is, make us to take repeated birth and death. But somehow, if one living entity is fortunate enough to come in association of devotees and gets knowledge about the Supreme Lord, and then starts developing, some affection towards the Lord and starts rendering devotional service into him, all these misgivings will slowly will go away. When those there are two types of pious activities. One is material pious activities, which simply gives, when we do those action, which gives positive reaction. Those are called punya. But the second type of spiritual pious activities is spiritual activities. That means some devotional service unto the Lord, knowingly or unknowingly, if you have done it, right? That spiritual activity, right? Akarma is the one which gives the purification. That purification helps us to realize who we are and helps us to start rendering devotional service unto him completely towards the Lord out of love and go back to Godhead. So this realization, right, comes by two ways. One is the step-by-step process, which is going through karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and then coming to bhakti yoga, and then realizing who we are completely. Or the other is the elevator process of bhakti yoga, which one directly takes. Simply by coming in association of a devotee, starts, practicing bhakti, then he elevates, like how somebody in elevator goes fast, like that elevates in his consciousness pretty quickly, instead of going through several lifetime of purification. So Prabhupada further elaborates here that birth, death, old age and disease are only for the material body. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, doshana, darshanam. Whereas the soul, the spirit, right, does not have birth, death, old age and disease. Once we realize who we are, once we attain that spiritual body is there already within us, which is covered by the material energy, by the material body. Once we realize our swarupa, our real nature, who really we are, not theoretically, but realize that knowledge, right? We attain that spiritual body, we revive that spiritual body. Once we get that spiritual body, we get liberated immediately. So that liberated personality is Brahman. When Upanishad says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit, right? What does it mean? I am actually the eternal spirit. I am not this temporary body. That means that the eternal spirit is part and parcel of the Supreme. The purpose of the part is to serve the whole. So that means automatically we will be in our constitutional position and rendering devotional service into the Supreme Lord. So this attainment of devotional service, pure love for Krishna, right? Initially, people take up bhakti, right? There are 4 types of people take up bhakti, not with pure intention. They have some other motive. In the 7th chapter, right? Krishna explained about this. After 4 types of people who do not surrender to Krishna, then Krishna talks about 4 types of people who surrender to him, who come to him. Chaturvida bhajante mam, right? Jana sukirtino arjuna. Artho gignasu artarti nanicha baradarshaba. Chaturvida bhajante mam. 4 types of people starts rendering devotional service unto him. Jananam sukritinaha. These people are pious, right? Who are they? Artho, Artarti, and Gignasu, and Jnani, right? One who is distressed, one who is seeking material wealth, one who is simply inquisitive, and one who is seeking for the absolute truth. They all have some motives. But if they start rendering devotional service, eventually by the grace of the Lord, right, they will give up their misgivings and then they'll start developing pure love unto the Supreme Lord. Right, Prabhupada, that's what it is. By the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. And they attain the Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavana planet. Whereas the one who worships demigods, at the best, they might go up to the demigods planet. But they cannot be liberated from the clutches of the material energy. Next verse. Anybody would like to recite?
If somebody wants to read, then read. Shall I read them?
Yeah, please.
Sadhibhutadidevam mam sadhiyajnam cha ye viduhu prayana kale picha mam te viduryukta chetasaha. Sa Adibhuta, and the governing principle of the material manifestation. Advaitam, Adidaivam, I'm sorry, Chamyatam. Adidaivam, governing all the demigods. Mam, me. Sa Adi Yajnam, and governing all sacrifices. Cha, also. Those who. Viduhu, know. Prayana, of death. Kale, at the time. Api, even. Cha, and. Mam, me. They, Viduhu, know. Yukta Chetasya. Yukta Chetasaha. Their minds engaged in me. Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. Purport. Persons having in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation and even the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and at the time of death, such a Krishna conscious person can never forget Krishna. Naturally, he is thus promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavana. The 7th chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord and by his grace. One can understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes engaged in material activities. By gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that the human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter. The man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and disease, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in Krishna consciousness does not care for the different processes. He simply directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes
Krishna?
Something blocked my screen.
Oh, no problem.
In such a situation, he takes pleasure in healing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. He is convinced that by his doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Dridhavrata. And it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, of transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. The 7th chapter of Bhagavad-gita is the substance of that conviction. Thus, and the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this is a very nice purport here. Prabhupada nicely summarizes.
It's a very nice.
What the 7th chapter is. By understanding the 7th chapter properly, right, one can give up all misgivings and come to understand what is the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to realize who we are. We are all eternal spirits, which is part of the Supreme. We are part and parcel of the Supreme. The purpose of the part is to serve the whole. Somehow or the other, because of our desire to enjoy independently, we had come down into this material world. Once we had come into this material world, by influence of the 3 modes, we are going through different species of life, desiring to enjoy independently. That keeps us bound in this material world. Somehow, by fortune, one comes in contact of a devotee. That devotee gives the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. By that knowledge, one develops conviction to start rendering devotional service unto him. When sufficiently purified, he becomes fixed in that devotional service, and then he never forgets Krishna. Even at the time of death, he will remember Krishna and he goes back to spiritual world, Krishna Loka, or Goloka Vrindavana. So nicely Prabhupada summarizes here. So this is the, idea behind all the Vedic literature, bring us to this ultimate goal of life. Generally, Vedas deals with 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. But when somebody does all this Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, when sufficiently purified, he will realize the goal is not dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The goal is prema. The fifth purushartha is actually attainment of love for God. And that is the ultimate goal. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam explains. In the beginning itself, Bhagavatam tells, Dharma projita kaitavotra, right? This Bhagavata Purana, right, kicks out all this religion which focuses on only Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. But it helps one to realize the love who he is and helps one to develop the love for God. That is the fifth Purushartha. By engaging, by realizing who we are, we will automatically come to engage in loving devotional service unto him. By that service, one will go back to Godhead. So this is the ultimate goal of life. The 7th chapter nicely gives that substance of that conviction, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport. So, any comments, any questions so far? Not just on this 7th chapter or any of the chapters so far we covered from the 1st chapter to 7th chapter. In the 1st chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's lamentation, which leads to surrender to Krishna and make inquiry. 2nd chapter is Sankhya Yoga, the analytical study of matter and spirit. And then 3rd chapter is Karma Yoga. The 4th chapter is Jnana Yoga. The 5th chapter is Karma Sannyasa Yoga. And 6th chapter is Dhyana Yoga. The first 6 chapters comes under the Karma Yoga section. Karma Yoga means yoga of action. The living entities, the type of activities the living entities has to do to purify himself to understand who he is. By purifying the body, mind, and intelligence, he will realize that I am neither of this body, mind, or intelligence. I am misassociating myself life after life with the body and mind and intelligence. Actually, in fact, I am spirit soul. When he comes to that constitutional position, he will automatically start rendering devotional service because he will develop knowledge towards Krishna. So that is the Jnana Vijnana Yoga of the 7th chapter. So any comments, questions?
I really liked what you said today and the summary of the 7th chapter. No matter which path we choose, and it's the ultimate goal is to reach him. And then you talked about fifth Purushartha, which is the attainment of God's love. That is the most beautiful thing I have heard. That's the ultimate. And for a lay persons like me, who is not into so much Vedanta, it is more approachable, understandable, and meaningful, also purposeful. That is attainment of love for God. And I really liked what you said as fifth Purushartha. I did not hear that before.
As we know from the 15th chapter, we will realize going through all the Vedanta and everything is only for the purification of body, mind, and intelligence. Once we are purified, automatically we will come to this position of love. That is the ultimate goal. Even the people who are studying Vedanta, Bhagunam Janmanam Ante, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate, after many births and deaths, one who had got sufficient knowledge surrenders to Krishna and then starts rendering service to him. Bhagunam Janmanam Ante, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyante. Why he surrenders and renders devotional service unto Krishna? Because he understands Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Everything exists because of Vasudeva. So either we can go through this indirect process of many lives of studying Vedas, going through Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, and then finally come to Purushartha, or as you said, we can directly take up this bhakti, which is natural. And that is what this 7th chapter emphasizes. Even though we may not have not gone through all this karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and then finally coming to bhakti, one can directly take up the bhakti, as we said. And that gives hope for us. One can realize by the practice of bhakti, come to real bhakti. In the path of bhakti, the sadhana and sadhya, the process and the goal, both are same. Whereas in the other yogas, the process and the goal, they are not same. The process will help us to come to the goal. Whereas in the bhakti yoga, the process itself is the goal. That is loving service unto the Lord, attaining that pure love. Thank you. Thank you for,
Thank you
for expressing your heart.
Thank
That, because it's very natural for the living entity to take up bhakti.
Yes.
Because of our misgivings, we have to go through all these things. But that's why it said bhakti is very simple for the simple. But it is very profound.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
any other comments?
Dhanyavada. That is it.
Yeah. Okay. If there is no further comments, we will stop here. We will continue next week. We will start the 8th chapter. 8th chapter is called Akshara Brahma Yoga, right? Attaining the Supreme. Krishna is going to elaborate here. He said by remembering Krishna at the time of death, one can come to Krishna, right? Then he is going to elaborate. Arjuna is going to ask certain questions about Adibhuta, Adideva, and Adiyagya and all of them. And then how to remember Krishna at the time of death, he will ask. Then Krishna elaborates to those questions, the 8th chapter. So we will continue next week. We'll begin the 8th chapter next week. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.